everybody, it's Kay, and I'm bringing you a special bonus episode today. You guys probably remember our good friend Brendan from the UnChefed podcast. He joined us here on Fuck My Work Life a few episodes ago. He had some great stories of when he was a chef at a popular restaurant in New York City. Please go check out that episode. But I was lucky enough to join Brendan and his co-host Matt on their podcast called UnChefed, and we were discussing veganism. So this is not something that I talk about on our podcast very often because it can be a little off-putting to some people. It's my way of life, and I'm not trying to push it on anyone. But I wanted to share that episode here on our channel, so if some people didn't get a chance to hear it over on UnChefed, you can check it out here. If that doesn't sound like your thing, that's fine. But you should definitely go check out their podcast. They have a lot of really great conversations centered around food and the food industry and agriculture. That's a hard word. So anyway, enjoy this episode and please, please, please go check out UnChefed. Brendan and Matt are really smart, interesting, cool guys. Thanks.
So today we have a good friend of ours, Kay, from the Fuck My Work Life podcast. Kay has been a practicing vegan for over 11 years, and we thought that it might be interesting to talk to her about what it's like to walk in those shoes. We are going to discuss societal perception of the stereotypes that vegans might potentially have to deal with, what it's like to invest in your overall health and your shopping list, and different companies that are doing interesting things regarding plant-based foods, as well as what the difference between plant-based foods and veganism is. So we hope you enjoy this chat that we had with Kay. Let's set the mood.
Like I'm on my tiptoes, baby. You think a little too small. I got big goals, baby. Hey, where the money at? Look, I just need the info. Pronto, I go and get it, split it with my kinfolk.
It's time for another serving of UnChefed, a critical and often humorous look at the politics and history of food and agriculture from the perspective of two friends and former chefs. UnChefed, food unpacked.
I ain't surprised at all. Seen them rise and fall. Went up the mountain, it wasn't hard to climb at all. At the top, I found some relief. I finally got some peace. Carry on, but please don't mess up the mood. Yeah, I worked too hard for it. No, I need to beat it before you mess up the mood. Yeah, ooh, I worked too
Coffee. Coffee. Oh, you said coffee. Okay.
You need some coffee. All right. So, hi, Kay. Welcome to the show.
Hi, nice to see you.
Can you introduce yourself to our audience real quick?
Hi, I'm Kay. I am co-host of a podcast called Fuck My Work Life. Do you want me to talk about that right now, or just
Yes,
myself?
Absolutely. I love your show. I want to talk. I'd love to give a introduction to everybody.
Yeah, so we kind of share listener stories from the workplace. We base it off of, because we spend most of our waking hours at work. Most people do, and everyone has had a very shit day at work. So we kind of provide a cathartic space for people to share their stories and have other people listen and be like, oh, okay, yeah, so I'm not the only one that has to deal with just constant shit at work. But we make it funny and hopefully entertaining. So.
Yeah, you and Jay have a really great sense of humor.
Thank you. It's childish.
I think that's what speaks to me, though.
So when you guys read off Brendan's David Chang story, I thought that just took the cake.
I wrote that on the toilet at a hotel, and I think Binghamton. I woke up early in the morning. I wasn't using the bathroom. It's don't be gross or anything. It was a hotel, and it was early. It was 4:00 in the morning, and I didn't have anywhere else to go. So I just went in and turned the toilet into the desk, and had the I was typing it on my phone so that I didn't wake up my wife or my daughter.
It was a great story. It painted a very clear picture of the situation.
It was funny because it took me a little bit. And by the time I came out, like, I think my wife was aware that I was gone. So she's like, where were you? And I was like, I was writing a work story. And she's like, what? I don't care. And then she just went back to bed. And she's like, whatever, we'll listen to it later. So just to start us out, I've got a few quick statistics here for you from the FAO. 26% of ice-free land on the planet is reserved for livestock grazing. And 33% of croplands are used for livestock feeding. Those numbers were actually really high. Like, I wasn't aware that, a fourth of all habitable land is dedicated to livestock, and then 33% of all of our crops in the world go to feeding livestock. So I think we Americans put a lot of effort into constructing a carnivorous lifestyle in this country. And I honestly believe that meat is a little overrepresented. So, and that was the reason that you reached out to me, Kay, is, you've been a practicing vegan for over a decade. I don't know what it's like to actually have to go to the grocery store and purchase things. I don't know if that feels like a challenge to like find what it is that you're actually looking to eat,
It can be, and it definitely just depends on the type of grocery store. In the last, I'd say 5 years, it has become much, much easier. A lot of vegan-based companies have kind of blown up. They've been bought out by bigger companies, so the distribution of those vegan brands is much higher. So it has definitely gotten a lot easier. And, if you're more of a whole foods, plant-based type of vegan, you just go to your produce aisle and, you get fruits, vegetables, beans, that kind of thing. And you can find that anywhere, So,
yeah.
But it's definitely, I don't know if it's just America or if it's most of the world. I think we are a very meat centric, like our diet is meat. I hear people say so many times, like, I have to have some sort of meat with every meal or it's not a meal. And I think that's just how we are generally raised. It's just what's common, and it's just kind of accepted by everyone unless you start, researching and going a different way for whatever reason you want to go. So,
yeah. Does that ever make you, just out of curiosity, does that ever feel like maybe there's a conversation about food and it's a little bit more difficult to find your place in it? Or do you find that it like strengthens your ties because like you have a more solidified value structure? Like meat eaters, what you're saying, like, I don't feel like I've had a meal unless I have meat, isn't really saying anything specific. It's not saying like I need chicken or I need steak or I need fish, or I think it's just kind of like this perception that you have, but it's not like a solidified value structure like being a vegan is,
right. Yeah.
So does that separate you, or do you think that like connects you more to other vegans?
I definitely think there is just a general bond when you find someone else. Oh, you're a vegan too? Okay. So you've kind of, for whatever reason you chose to go vegan. We've probably had similar thought process around food. And it does blow my mind that most people don't think about what they're eating or why they're eating it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, this is food. This is the food I know, and this is what I'm going to eat. I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later. I don't try to separate, myself from meat eaters. Jay, my husband and co-host, is the biggest meat eater I know. And
we had a long talk about bacon with you.
Like an hour talk about smoking his own bacon. And, which, I'm not going to lie, sometimes it is a little difficult for me to see like a slab of meat on the countertop, but I'm not the type of person that's going to force my choices on somebody else.
Just as a comment, you made the point about, folks that sort of eat what they eat and they have to have a piece of protein or meat with every meal. And I think that there's this sort of like embedded non-intentional behavior, whereas folks who practice veganism really have to be very intentional about what they're eating, much more aware of what they're eating. And, I've met folks who just sort of decide to do vegan, like just off the cuff, just randomly, and they can end up in some very serious sort of health gray area as a result of that, not being smart about the choices they're making.
I like the direction you're going with that, because one of the things that I think I meant when I said being vegan has a more defined value structure is that you have to engage with your diet in a way that, you know, people that are just like, I need meat. And it's like, well, what kind of meat do you eat? I don't know. I just need meat. Like, I need a kind of steak. Like, there's so many different kinds of ways that you can take meat in. Like, you can get a cut that has a lot of gelatin, for instance, which I'm arthritic. That's actually something that's really good for me because I have like joint issues. And that's not the same thing as having like a fillet. Like, it's a completely different thing. And it's a very loose value structure to just say meat without considering like all the nutritional elements of like different parts of an animal. And that's something that I see people with more defined value structures behind how they eat. Like they have answers for questions like that. Like, you know, if I were to ask you, like, where are you getting your B vitamins from? That's probably a conversation that you could have pretty easily, right?
I mean, overall, yes. I think it's accurate to say that it's definitely something that I have to think about, like, where are these certain things coming from when I eat, but it is not difficult to get B vitamins as a vegan. It's actually, so specifically, I know the big one is B12, right? So everyone's like, oh, you know, vegans they're going to be B12 deficient, and I get my blood work done fairly regularly, and I've never been B12 deficient. It's very easy to get enriched plant-based like milks or nutritional yeast all have B vitamins in it, and you don't need a ton of B vitamins. You know, they store themselves in your bodies for long periods of time. So the thing about B12, which I think is funny, is so it's based off, it comes from like a bacteria, right? And it binds to most animal types of proteins, but your body can't digest it in that way. So if you eat a piece of meat that, you know, has the B vitamins in it, it requires your stomach acids and enzymes to break it down and pull that B12 from the protein source to actually absorb it. Whereas when you're getting plant-based ones that don't have to break down that protein to get to it, it's actually absorbing more into your bloodstream and easier than from like an animal-based protein. So I found that very interesting.
That is really interesting. Not everybody knows that, you know, and that's something I think people are becoming increasingly interested in is, you know, like just that level of consideration in your health. You know, we were talking with Kelly from Drunk Theory on the episode, and one of the things that we had mentioned was that people just don't feel good a lot of the times. You know, and they're trying to figure out like why they don't feel good. We were talking about allergens. They're trying to figure out why they don't feel good. And I think a lot of it is, again, just not having some of those more solidified value structures. Like you just gave a very in-depth and comprehensible explanation of something that I think your average person would look at and feel just completely overwhelmed by. Yeah. You know, because you're right. It's not difficult to get the B12, but how many times have you heard people say that about like becoming vegan and saying like, you know, I don't think I could do it. How am I going to get my B vitamins? I've thought that, and I'm a professional food person, you know?
I mean, actually the biggest thing I hear is I could never give up cheese.
Yeah.
Which
that would be
I used to say that too. Like I used to be one of those people.
But you have a lot of really good options. Like, have you ever tried making cheese out of the nutritional yeast with like potato and
yeah. So there's
a
local,
good.
It's really good. There's a local company here that makes like a queso, like a nacho queso, and it's just potatoes, carrots, cashews, nutritional yeast, garlic, and I will eat an entire jar of that thing in one sitting. It's so good, and it gives me that kind of cheese. It satisfies the cheese craving, but then I also don't feel like shit after eating all of it. So you know,
right.
I love it, but I have made it myself before too, and now I can just buy it and someone else makes it for me.
It is not as easy. I mean, well, cheese isn't easy to make by any stretch of the imagination, but and like no non-vegan is making their own cheese. Like I'm not
No.
I've made cheese at home, but I don't make it often, you know? I don't know people that aren't of like a chefly way who are making their own cheese at home anyway. But like, that's kind of cool that, you know, as somebody who eats vegan, you are more aware of this alternative cheese style. And I know way more vegans that eat the cheese that they make at home, the vegan cheese that they make at home, than I do non-vegans who wouldn't even try that, wouldn't even attempt that, they don't know how to make the cheese that they like that's made up from dairy, and they wouldn't attempt that. But they would also dismiss, I think, more readily this idea of making vegan cheese at home as well.
I know a few people who make their own vegan cheese, and I've wanted to try it. It just seems like a lot of work, and I'm lazy. So I will just continue to buy it. But there is a really great vegan cheese company based out of, I think, up in your area. I think right around like Petaluma, somewhere up in northern.
Miyoko's.
Miyoko's.
Yep. Yeah, I was just going to mention that actually. They've got some vegan cheese. I could literally walk from where I work to where their facility is, but they have vegan cheese. They have a vegan butter that's just surprisingly good. I've always really appreciated like vegan products that sort of take you by surprise and are just way better than what you expect. I mean, there's a lot of things that fall in that category. You've got the Beyond Meats and the what's the other one? Impossible Burger shit. We just did an episode on these guys. Damn it. Coffee.
I know, when I saw you guys are doing that topic, I was like, ooh, I can't wait to listen to this one.
Yeah. One of the ones that took me really off guard was coconut based yogurt. And when I had that, I'm like, who gives a shit about dairy? This is awesome. Like, who cares?
Ashley makes yogurt out of almond milk and cashew milk frequently.
And it's like, I think it tastes, I mean, it's been a long time, so I can't compare one to the other, but for me, it tastes very similar to what I remember yogurt tasting like, dairy yogurt.
I guess in this light, are there any wisdoms to maintaining your health through dieting that you would directly attribute to eating vegan for as long as you have?
Well, it cuts out a lot of fast food because you just can't do that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, honestly, the thing that made me finally switch to going vegan, and it wasn't, when I did it, I wasn't like, okay, I'm just going to become vegan. I was just like, I'm going to do this for a week because I was eating like shit constantly. Jack in the Box all the time. And for me, I'm a kind of like an all or nothing. If I give myself an inch, I'll take a mile. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this for a week. I'm going to kind of cleanse my system. Went out and bought a bunch of vegetables and read some books and made sure I was eating the right stuff for a week. And you were talking about before, when you were talking with Kelly, and how people just don't feel good. I mean, obviously I was eating like shit. It didn't, every single day around 1, 2 o'clock, I could not keep my eyes open. I was just tired. I felt just heavy all the time. And after about 5 days of eating vegan, I noticeably felt so much better. I had more energy, and I just felt, I don't know how to describe it, just overall
you felt
lighter.
Like yourself.
Yeah, and I never went back, and that was almost 11 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was really that I was eating like shit, and I was starting to realize, like, okay, I have to do something about this and make some healthier choices. And that's what kind of kickstarted it. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I know a lot of people think when they hear someone's vegan, they automatically think they're healthy, and that's not necessarily true. There's a lot of vegan junk food. Like I said before, I'm kind of lazy. I tend to get into the habit of just buying like the frozen vegan products, which are overly processed and stuff, but they're easy, they're familiar, but you still I still have to consider, you're like, okay, I need to eat some vegetables. I need to eat some black beans or some chickpeas and make sure I'm getting some healthy fiber and healthy fats into my system, and not try to eat overly processed stuff. And it's like I said, it's becoming easier and easier to do that with kind of supplementing with those vegan products that are, like I said, are familiar to like how I used to eat, but still a little bit healthier.
I would imagine, that you probably have some moments where there's a bit of like routine fatigue, and that some of those products are kind of like a boredom breaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like I just need some goddamn ice cream.
Tired
some
of the
really good
workaday
vegan ice
world. I'm eating a
cream.
block of cheese.
Oh my god, are you kidding me? Oh man, what's the one that's really good? Oatly. You tried
Yep.
Oatly? Oh,
Their
boy.
milk and their ice cream.
Again, it was like, who gives a shit about dairy? Like,
The oat milk craze, I am all about. Like it was soy for a long time. Like the only coffee creamer or cheese or ice cream was soy, and it's okay, but it doesn't do the same thing that when you start using those cashew, especially like cashew based things, you get that nice creaminess that for me is very similar to the dairy, like, mouthfeel or whatever. So any like, but oat milk too, like, oh man, in my coffee every morning is just
I've
oat
replaced milk with oat milk, to be honest. And it's not because I don't love regular milk. Like I love like local dairies. I don't like the mass produced milk that you'll find on grocery store shelves. Like I actually get from like a halal co-op. But even that I've kind of replaced with oat milk lately. And first off, the flavor is really good. The texture is pretty consistent with what you get from a nice whole milk. And on top of everything else, I think this is something that's really big for me since I'm, always kind of looking at things from an ethical perspective. Oats are the most sustainable dairy alternative that we have access to, and significantly more sustainable than dairy itself. So I actually invested pretty heavily in Oatly right before they tanked because, I'm good at stuff, I guess.
why not?
So I lost a fair amount of money, but I'm not getting rid of it because I think that at some point it's going to go back up, because I think just like the amount of good on the plate of like the oats milk concept in general, like the sustainability, the flavor, I think that it's going to have a more prominent place in our daily lives in the near future.
One of the things that I think's really cool. So a lot of the companies that we're discussing, again, are in the same sort of general food space, the natural organic food space. So every year we have, well, at least until COVID, we had this really big trade show called the National Foods Expo, and they do one on the West Coast and the East Coast. So a lot of these companies, like, you really get an opportunity to get up close and personal and meet, founders and, folks within the exec team and marketing teams and all those things. And a lot of these companies like Oatly, I mean, it's just great people that work there. So kudos for you for being an owner there, Brendan.
Yeah, I actually, I was a little bit of a vegan food blogger for a while. So I've been to the Natural Products Expo a few years in a row, and it was
much fun.
A lot of fun.
What I love about Natural Products Expo is if you've got the right pass, these guys straight just party their ass off. Like the minute, and I used to be one of the company. I work for a beverage company out here, and I would actually do these kegged cocktails, and we were very popular. Like very, very popular.
Combine two things people love: kegs and cocktails. You're a hit at those parties.
Man, the booze night.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
We're going to pause right there for a minute and take a quick break. We're going to highlight a friend of the show. Kindly check them out if you get a chance. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Kay from the Fuck My Work Life podcast.
Have you ever had a bad day at work?
Well, the Fuck My Work Life podcast is perfect for you.
Hosts Jay and Kay share listeners' entertaining stories from the workplace, which may have you thinking you don't have it so bad after all.
Find Fuck My Work Life on your favorite podcast platform.
So is there, so you probably have a lot of, through your, food blogging and doing the shows, you probably have an above average awareness of like the brands that exist in the vegan space. Are there like the same kind of distinction? Like you look at non-vegan brands and you kind of know that like some brands are more ethical and some brands are less ethical, but there's like such a wide berth. Like you look at Jimmy Dean sausage versus like Amy's Organic, for instance. Like one of those companies is obviously going to have like a better ethical perception, I think. Is that the same thing? Like do you have like enough brands to have like brand wars in the vegan space where like one of them is kind of like your Jimmy Dean and the other's like your Amy's Organic, or
Right.
You know what I mean?
I think a little bit. So a lot of times, like I said before, there's a company called Gardein, and they started off as like an
Garden of
independent company.
Like
No,
Eaton as an
well,
EAT.
No, this is Gardein. It's like
Gardein.
Gardein. Yeah,
Not at all what I said.
Gardein. So they were a company out of Canada.
Only from Alabama, huh?
I have heard of Garden of Eden.
Garden of Eden.
That is a company too. But they kind of, I feel like they kind of pioneered the vegan products. Like, they made crab cakes and fishless fillets and kind of these frozen vegan foods that, again, kind of comfort foods that you just didn't really get anymore as a vegan. And they blew up and everyone loved them. And then they got bought out by ConAgra. And so, I mean, I'm more of the side that it's like, okay, yes, now they're part of this big shitty factory farming company, but now these vegan products that will still remain vegan products are more widely available to more people. And maybe that will make people make the choice that, hey, maybe I can have this lifestyle as well. But then there are other vegans who have shown them and won't buy them because, I mean, technically, ultimately, your money's kind of going into that pocket of a shitty company. So there are companies like that. And then there's one of the ones that I really like is called Upton Naturals. And they're still independently owned out of Chicago. I believe it's a husband and wife that started it. And they use really interesting foods to recreate foods. So they're big into the jackfruit. So shredded jackfruit, like barbecue style, and really simple ingredients. And now they just started using banana blossoms as kind of like a fish alternative, which I haven't tried yet, but it sounds super interesting. So they're kind of on the spectrum of a little bit more, I don't know, a little more ethical, not getting into like, you know, Gardein products, even like Beyond Meat. You look at the list of ingredients and there's like a ton of ingredients on there. Not necessarily like the healthiest choice. When you look at Upton's Naturals, I think they were, when we were talking about when you were on our show, Brendan, the hot dog that has a snap.
Yeah.
So their hot dog's made out of seitan and it's got that snap, and it's, again, for the hot dog, there's a little bit more ingredients, but not as bad as a normal hot dog. So there's definitely a variety of those companies, like the ones that are kind of considered bad, air quotes, bad in the vegan world, and some that are a little bit more, I guess, ethical or local. I don't know.
Do any of these companies have like anything on the horizon that you might be excited about? Do they ever like mention we're playing around with this new fish alternative, or like we've got a new line of goods that we're really thinking about? Is that something that you get communicated with, and do you get it? Is there anything in the pipeline that might be exciting to you?
I'm sure there is, because I don't really do the blogging anymore, and I was way more active and involved when I lived in Los Angeles, and I had a huge network of kind of vegan friends, and I've kind of gotten away with that. I've kind of gotten to a point where it's like, I'm like, this is just my lifestyle. I don't need to have my finger on the pulse of everything. I'm sure.
I'm happy with my block of vegan cheese.
I mean, I definitely follow some of my favorite companies on their social medias, and every once in a while something will pop up. That's how I recently found out about the banana blossom thing. That was new information to me, and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. So it's, the pulse is there. I am just not actively looking for it at the moment.
We're getting a lot of your personal experience with moving through the world as a vegan. I'm also kind of interested in the sort of societal perception, and this is something you sort of grazed earlier, do you think vegans get stereotyped a lot?
Yes.
I knew the answer was yes.
So I think the way vegans, when they're portrayed in the media, they're definitely portrayed in a certain way, very aggressive. And I also think PETA does a lot of that, gives that stereotype. I'm not a huge fan of PETA and the way they go about things, because I think they turn people off from the concept of wanting to become vegan. And I also think that is why the term plant-based has come out a lot more in the last couple years as opposed to vegan. I mean, I think there is a difference. Plant-based to me is more of a dietary choice, whereas veganism is more of kind of a overall lifestyle choice. Like, I think people, one or the other for different reasons, right? Like plant-based, I feel like those people are more concerned about their health, whereas veganism, I think, is more tied into the ethical treatment
like not
of
having
animals.
a leather belt, for instance, that doesn't tie into your diet. But
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how many times, like, I don't ever outwardly be like, "Hi, I'm Kay. I'm vegan. Nice to meet you." I've learned, like, we haven't even really talked about it on our podcast, because I know that there will be people who are they'll immediately think not less of me, but have a perception of me that isn't true. Like this aggressive, everyone who eats meat is a dick type of attitude. And that's just most of the people. Like I said, when I lived in Los Angeles, I had a huge network of vegan friends and acquaintances. Very, very, very few of them were that way. Most of them, do I think it would be great if everyone decided to go vegan? Yes. Do I think that's going to happen? No. Am I okay with that? Yes. So I'm not going to be aggressive and push my views on people and try to change the way they want to live their life. I believe everyone makes their own decisions, but I think there is a perception of that's all we want to do as vegans is come in at you and yell at you and tell you the way you're living your life is wrong and the way you're eating is wrong. And here's a picture of an animal in a slaughterhouse. And doesn't this make you feel something? And,
Right. Yeah. Been there.
And I mean, it does happen. There are those types of people, but I think the majority of the vegans that I've come in contact with are not that way. They more hope to change people's minds just by talking about their lifestyle and not trying to force it on them. I've had a lot of people who will ask me questions about something because, like I said, I don't actively give up information. If someone says something like, "Oh, well, this the dairy industry," then I just that's not my way of living. But if someone asks me a specific question, I try to answer in a way that's thoughtful and will hopefully make them think about, what they're putting in their body or the kind of companies they're supporting. So there's definitely the stereotype. There's inevitably any time, like when I was doing the food blogging, how many fucking comments I got about, "Ooh, but what about bacon?" And it's just like, okay, well, do you have a more intelligence response to that? Like, it just...
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are kind of aware, like it's public knowledge now that industrial agriculture is not like really an attractive prospect for a living organism, and I think that there's kind of this thing where people are aware of this fact and they don't really know what to do with it. So they see people that actually do have kind of an answer, whether it's intentional or incidental. Like, I don't think that every person that decides to eat vegan does it specifically because of like a love of, animal rights, for instance. Mm-hmm. But it is incidental that, you're not hurting animals if you're not eating them quite as much. Like, that's just,
right.
It's kind of hard to deny that. So it's people that don't know what to do with the fact that they feel kind of bad about the conditions of industrial agriculture find it easy to turn people who have made these choices that present a possible solution into pariahs and say, like, well, instead of it being about making the best choice around food or around my health, now it becomes a choice about my rights and my ability to be free to make my own choices, which I think is a popular way of shifting the conversation these days is people like not looking at, the situation in a good faith sort of way, so much as trying to find a way to shift it into like a blame game and saying like, I'm victimized, like you choosing to solve the problem in a way that I'm not sure I'm okay with is kind of victimizing my ability to choose. You're making me feel bad about myself.
Yeah. And, actively seeking out whether or not I would post something like, oh yeah, here's a recipe for this. And someone would come in and just immediately be aggressive about it. And why are you so mad? What did I?
What a waste of time.
Yeah. What is my life choice? Like, how is this affecting your life? Just chill the fuck out. If you don't want to make this recipe, move on. It was amazing. Just the immediate kind of angry reaction certain people would have, and just like, why? But I think it goes along with that stereotype. They're expecting me to be aggressive with them. And then when you're not, they don't know how to handle it. It's like they wanted a fight.
No, it is interesting because you don't see anybody getting like bent out of shape on like Serious Eats or New York Times cooking.
Yeah. Well, there was the time they put the peas in the guacamole that caused a huge uproar.
I did hear about that.
Gasp.
I know. I'm. Yeah.
The comments were amazing on that.
Yeah. So, it's funny because I've observed like these different sort of buckets of how veganism like takes shape with people. I do think there's this sort of outlook from, less intelligent, less interested people where it's just sort of a cookie cutter, like one size fits all. Here's who you are. I've always been fascinated by how, what veganism or being vegan or whatever you want to call it, like means to different individuals. Because, you've seen everything from, the very practical over all the way to this sort of activist way of thinking. One person I had in mind, he's a good friend of mine. He's a vegan and he's a triathlete. And he's very practical. And I've always been very impressed with his outlook. He's like, yeah, so if I'm backpacking in Costa Rica and there's nothing but pork tacos, like I'm not going to starve. I'm going to eat pork tacos. Right. Or, he's eating, 9 meals a day, basically plant-based. And he's like, sometimes I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to crave an egg. And that's probably my body telling me that I need something in that egg. So I'm going to go for it. On the other hand, his wife is has a much different outlook on it, where it's, I don't want utensils that have been in contact with meat. And I remember she was roommates with a friend of mine years ago, where there was a whole like scuffle around somebody else in the house, like using her utensils to make like a pot of chili.
How could you?
And she had to throw everything away. I'm not making fun of her. I just want to like, I think there are very different sort of personalities around the practice of being vegan that I've always found interesting from a sort of social observation.
It's not something you can really stereotype, I don't think, but that doesn't stop people from trying, which is interesting.
Yeah, for sure. One of the first things when Jay and I moved in together, someone asked him, she let you have meat in the house? It's his house too, for one. And it can be there. I don't have to eat it.
Well, let's be clear, though. You are letting it, right? So, I mean, the wife always wins. Yeah, like we're not confused about how it is.
I don't know if we would have stayed together if I said he couldn't have meat in the house. Okay? I think that would have been a major fight.
So I do have one final question for you. Do you think that it's a good thing that we're seeing all of these fake meats, or are we just bringing, the opportunity to be vegan into the same realm of bad choices that non-vegans have kind of been in since the Industrial Revolution? Like you said that, being vegan doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't eating junk food all the time. And now we're seeing like plant-based meats from Impossible Foods and Beyond Burger. And it seems like, it could be a good thing for veganism, but it's also moving us further away from the plants that keep us heavy. It's just, or healthy. It's just, kind of making the junk food culture accessible to vegans who have traditionally, been a little bit more on top of their health. So I guess my question is, do you think that the plant-based meats are kind of a good thing, or do you think that it's sort of putting us in, a bad space?
I definitely think it depends on who you ask, right? It depends on the person's values. So we touched on it earlier. I don't think the majority of people think about what they put in their bodies, right? Mm-hmm. They just eat food. I'm going to grab this steak. I'm going to grab these, processed cheese. I'm going to eat this because this is what I'm used to eating. Mm-hmm. I think the way the vegan products are going, there's definitely a little bit more of that in the vegan world. I personally, because I'm already conditioned to kind of think about what I eat, like I was saying earlier, yes, I tend to kind of lean towards those more heavily processed products because they're easy and they're familiar. Mm-hmm. But I can catch myself and be like, okay, I need to add in some more healthy foods. Mm-hmm. So I'm already in the vein of thinking about what I eat. But I do think having these readily available products are good because they will make it easier for people who are maybe toying with the idea of eliminating meat for their diets to have these easy, familiar options. And ultimately, for me, I think that's the less animals you have to kill. And like you said in the beginning of the episode, the amount of space on the earth dedicated to keeping and feeding livestock is pretty insane when you think about the countries with starving people, and we can grow these crops and feed everyone instead of feeding the food that's feeding us and maybe not actually having the healthiest effect on all of us. It seems like a very strange cycle to me. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not. I think
you absolutely are.
I think it's good to have the options and making it more accessible to people who are toying with the idea. But I do think it might keep people who aren't already actively thinking about what they put in their bodies every day jump into a vegan diet where they're only eating these types of processed vegan meat products, and they're not going to have the health that they thought they might be getting by switching to a vegan diet.
Yeah.
So I think it's a kind of it depends on why you're doing it, why you're choosing it, and if that particular person is going to do the research to make sure they are getting the right nutrition that their body needs.
Just to build on that, I think that the idea that some of the up and coming, processed sort of meat replacement or like meat things, I think is a huge benefit, arguably more so to the non-plant-based eater, the carnivorous folks than it is the I think folks who are vegan, I think, have done a great job of sort of figuring their own shit out, right? I don't think that in a lot of cases, those types of products are the keystone within their diet. But, I think just for myself personally, one of the reasons that you might see meat in every single meal that I eat is that I'm insanely hell-bent on getting a very specific and intentional amount of protein in my diet every single day. And there's a lot of benefits to that. There's a lot of muscle soreness that doesn't exist. I mean, there's reasons that I do that. There's only so many protein shakes I can drink, right? Yeah. So having access to some of these, ultra processed products has been helpful for me. I totally agree that, there's gotta be some solution to sort of curb the magnitude of where the meat industry has gone and the environmental impact off of that, right? So I think there's, in my head, I'm always shopping for this or hoping for this solution that kind of works holistically for everybody, where we can really minimize that and start to sort of curb the effects of this massive industry. But it is interesting, just around who do those products benefit more? And I think they're actually more to the benefit of meat eaters in a lot of cases than folks who are vegan.
I think about how you're saying you could go to the produce section to supplement the junk food and just get some produce. And when I see something like, I think that there's a mind frame behind, just eating meat and a mind frame behind not eating meat that is reductive for sure. It's definitely reductive. But I think that when I see Impossible Foods and Beyond Meat, like successfully making, plant-based meat that we're all okay with, I don't see that as bringing people into plant-based lifestyle so much as I see that as kind of a threat against the produce section. And I think that like this need that we have to like take vegetables and hammer them into different shapes kind of incentivizes this idea that vegetables are bad to begin with. And I hate that because I actually love these products. I think that they're really good. And I think that there's an opportunity to incorporate them in properly. But I'm concerned that without proper education, like I think for every time you support like an Impossible Burger, you also need to like support a banana, or like support, you know what I mean? You have to like,
got to keep the universe in balance.
You have to like balance it out. Like every time you take like a processed food and you say that this is good, you have to like put an equal amount of energy into highlighting an unprocessed food, which is sort of what you said is your goal. Whenever you feel like you need to counterbalance some of the vegan junk food that you get, you go to the produce section. And I think that that's actually sage-like.
Yeah.
And I mean that.
Anytime,
joking, but I mean it.
Yeah.
Anytime Jay smokes the slab of bacon, Kay has to eat 12
cauliflower.
bunches of kale.
Yeah.
Munching on the
Balance, baby. Balance.
I mean, cauliflower steaks are real good. So.
They are. Cauliflower has turned into quite the versatile crop recently.
Oh man, you kidding me? Mm-hmm. My favorite is just like buffalo cauliflower. That's that.
Gobi Manchurian,
so
man.
Just mountains of.
It's really good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's it for my questions. I don't know if you have any final thoughts you want to put into the interview that we just had before we do our kind of signing off process, but now's the time if you want to.
Me?
Yeah. Guest of honor.
I mean, I don't really have any words of wisdom. I just wish people, and we've said this a few times already, I wish people would really think about what they eat, where it comes from, the impact it has on the environment, and the choices that they're making, instead of just, blindly eating. I like this because it tastes good. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, there's right. Food that tastes good that might be something that, is different to you, like a cauliflower steak. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because we've talked about Jay being a big meat eater. And when we first started dating, he thought vegan food was just, he was like picturing raw vegan, like just a plate of raw vegetables. And when I started cooking meals for him, like curry chickpeas, and he was just, wow, this is really good. He didn't know that vegan food could be delicious, and it kind of opened his eyes. He will never ever go vegan, and that's fine. But he also enjoys a nice vegan meal every now and then. And even if people just lessen the amount of meat that they eat, I think it can have a big overall impact on their health and the planet, and it's not a scary thing.
So I guess I do have one. How are those not words of wisdom? Like, I don't have any words of wisdom, and then just drops the truth. Okay, well, I gotta say,
imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's real, right? All right, so that is about it for our time. Kay, can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, so we are the Fuck My Work Life podcast. We're on all the major podcast platforms. Our season 3 is starting in February. Our episodes drop every Wednesday, and you can follow us on all the social medias at FMWL Pod.
You should really do that, everybody. Seriously. They bring like such great humor. I mean, they're hilarious, and it helps to take some of the sting out of our workplace tragedies, through their wonderful sense of humor. So definitely go check them out. Okay, thank you for stopping by, and thank you for helping us to contribute in our quest to make people feel sad about eating. I don't know if I'm going to leave that in, but I wanted to say.
That was my goal.
That was my goal. I want you all to be really sad about eating. Okay, I hope this was enlightening. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation. That's it for us.
I just want to get Cave just saying like "catch you later, fuckers."
Well, that's what you call your audience, right? You call them fuckers.
We do.
It's great.
We call
I
them
love it so
fuckers.
much.
So we actually had a vote on Twitter because there were a few different options, and fuckers won.
That's a good one. Yeah.
We love it.
It works out really well.
All right, everyone. That's this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to us on your platform of choice. We are currently on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Please write us a review and let us know what you thought of the episode. Also, reach out and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can check our website out at UnChefed.com to see projects we're working on and to sign up for our newsletter. We'll see you next week.
Coming in, how you better get out the kitchen. Yeah, I could make a hit on whatever you pitching. Baby, let me fill up whatever you missing. Or you like it up at the top, it's a better view, isn't it? I'm not surprised at all, no way. Hey, what you need, come on, just pay the fee. I supply it all. Went up the mountain and it wasn't hard to climb at all.